Ace Combat's been around for a while, and in that time we've gotten quite the handful of missions. What's more interesting is that they all range from literally the most beautiful thing you've ever seen in your life
The skies belong to everyone. Now, let us take back our sheltered skies.
to utter abysmal dog shit. So it got me thinking, what are the best and worst Ace Combat missions of all time? To give this list some credibility and help me pretend to know what I'm talking about, I devised a 3-part rating system to rank each mission. In every mission, there are 3 main pillars of the experience. The atmosphere, which involves the environment, music, dialogue, and just the overall vibe of the level. The gameplay, which is the gameplay. And the legacy, which involves how innovative or impactful the mission was for its time, as well as stupid stuff like how memorable and important it is for community culture. I assume everybody's seen the standard tier list system. This one was made by a guy on Reddit called SidewinderSerpent, so shout out to him. For this ranking, I consider C tier to be average, B tier to be above average, and A tier great. S tier I reserve for franchise defining missions, and D tier is for any garbage we might come across along the way. Anyways, I was gonna do all the Ace Combat games, but I think the video would be too long, so I just did 4, 5, 0, 6, and 7. Without further ado, let's start with Ace Combat 4. Starting the tier list off, we begin with the first mission of Ace Combat 4, Sitting Duck. My first and most played Ace Combat was Shattered Skies, so this is probably the mission I've played the most out of the entire series. Despite all that playtime, it's somehow never gotten boring for me to complete. I think it's a weird mix of nostalgia and the charm that make it so good, since the mission really is just shooting down some slow bombers and their useless escorts. The opening cutscene is basic, but it helps set the tone. But it's the soundtrack in particular that's great and really captures that first mission feel. The environment is cool too. I always like collecting my AC4 craters. All that being said, I could probably play this mission for the next 20 years and still not get bored of it, so we're going to start off strong with a solid A tier. Imminent Threat, on the other hand, does get stale at times, but it's still a relatively enjoyable mission to play. The gameplay can be quite fun with some good enemy variety and a decent diversion with the escorts. Shout out the Imminent Threat substation. The environment is interesting in some ways, but it feels pretty boring for the most part. The music is nice, but it doesn't make up for the mission like Sitting Duck's track does. Overall, just a solid average mission, which isn't really a bad thing since it's the second mission, so I'll go ahead and put it in C tier. Probably my least favorite mission in the first half of Ace Combat 4 is the Northern Eye. Starting off with the good, the environment and the soundtrack are great. They really captured that grand nature of the mountain range. Krasinski Crater exists, so that's pretty neat. Other than that though, the gameplay is just substandard and is such a step down from Imminent Threat. The mission has these awkwardly spaced radar targets and a handful of escorts that take at most 2 to 3 minutes to destroy. To make things worse, you can be locked out of S rank if your allies get a kill or 2 on the escorts. Which yeah, could be a skill issue, but some of the kills they can get are actually ridiculous. The mission update is also boring and makes no sense. I think the return line would have been better if it was introduced in Lifeline. Just a very short, unexciting mission. I think it would have been better if they added another mission about the evacuation from St. Ark so this mission would mean a little bit more. Otherwise, not the best mission, so Northern Eye gets a D tier from me. Blockade is a fan favorite mission that has a strength similar to Sitting Duck. It really accomplishes that arcadey charm that Ace Combat 4 is primarily known for. The gameplay itself is standard. The new mechanic here is jamming, but it's inconsequential to how you play. It just takes a little bit longer to find the E767s, so it's not much to go off on. Other than that, it's a pretty basic air-to-air mission where you go down 3 transports with some escorts. I do really enjoy the high altitude atmosphere though.
Oh my god, bro. Hell no, man. What the fuck, man?
The real joy is the soundtrack, which is incredibly catchy and is definitely one of the best tracks in the series. I'll play this level over and over again just to listen to the soundtrack, so it kind of gets carried to B tier in my opinion. The first night and score attack mission of Ace Combat 4, Lifeline is one of my favorite missions in the game. Score attack missions in Ace Combat are very polarizing, but I think most people enjoy Lifeline for its interesting enemy variety and level design. The offshore oil drilling platforms have good designs, and the enemy density in the refinery makes it a fun target for your unguided bombs or your multi-target missiles. The soundtrack and ambience of the level are on point. One of my favorite moments from AC4 is when the soundtrack drops to this amazing part. The Yellow Squadron mission update, while imposing at first, is not interesting or scary in the slightest, especially after several dozen playthroughs. You have to willingly 180 and intercept Yellow Squadron to see them half the time, since the game spawns you halfway to the return line anyway. Even if you do, they barely target you.
What's he doing?
He's just standing there, menacingly. Get out of this!
The return line, while we're at it, could be placed a little bit closer. I don't really like when I have to spend most of my time flying back when I want to blow more things up. It's a great mission, but it has unreached potential. I'm also going to place it in B tier. The first major mission of AC4, Invincible Fleet has you destroying a fleet that is quite literally anything but invincible. Pack a few anti-ship missiles on your Mirage and find that the centerpiece of the Erusian Navy begins to crumble in a few minutes. And that's not really a slight on this mission either, since I think it serves as one of the turning points for Mobius 1's infamy. The enemy variety, density, and level design are all on point, at least gameplay wise. Comberth Harbor looks good, and the soundtrack captures that great enemy vibe very well. I love it when Sky aura farms by confirming every ship you sink.
Carrier Geophon, son. Aegis class Raven, son. Battleship Tanager, son.
It was only made better for me when we realized that Torres was captaining the Tanager. That's 2-0, buddy. The only problem I have with this mission is that it's 15 minutes long with no checkpoints, so it could get kind of annoying if you die and have to restart from the beginning. And I have, multiple times. All in all, just a very solid mission that's missing that extra bit to get it over to S tier, but I think it's a very high A tier regardless. With how silly this mission is and the fact that the only warning you get at Stonehenge is that little flash in the briefing, Deep Strike, on the surface, does seem pretty boring. The enemies are solar panels and the occasional anti-air installment. The flak guns can be scary, but a low approach really just makes them trivial. The escorts serve to stall this mission's runtime by a minute or two, since you could probably end it in below 2 to 3 minutes if you destroy only the 3 TGTs. Despite all that, this mission is just so good. Getting jumped by Stonehenge is cool and serves as the progression for the next great Erusian threat after the Aegir fleet. My favorite part of the mission though is the soundtrack. God bless the Japanese people. I think it's so good that it easily gets it from more of a C tier to a B tier mission. The classic Ace Combat formula that always makes the best missions is throwing an entire Air Force worth of aircraft to destroy and accompanying it with the greatest soundtrack you've ever heard in your life. Shattered Skies is no exception. It is the pure, distilled essence of arcade dogfighting. The moment-to-moment gameplay of this mission is great, and the addition of the yellows in a controlled way preserves their infamy while still making the mission more engaging to play, unlike some squadrons.
If he was serious enough, and I was a woman, I would probably fall for him myself.
While AC4's strong suit was never dialogue, in this mission it's good and captures that chaotic atmosphere that you get while dogfighting. Back to the soundtrack, Komodo is easily in contention for a top 10 soundtrack of the entire series. All that is great, but then you realize this is all happening over an active rocket launch facility to tie it all together. And I guess the mission update and Easter eggs are there too. I was like seeing B2s and Blackbirds in Ace Combat games. It's just so perfect, man. This cannot go anywhere other than S tier. Hot off Shattered Skies, Operation Bunker Shot has a lot to live up to. And it gets pretty close. The build up to liberating lost territory in any Ace Combat game requires a mission that really captures that essence, which Bunker Shot does perfectly. The mission has a great atmosphere that nails that D-Day feel, with the harsh weather, dark environment, and specks of gunfire that you see throughout the level. I love flying above the cloud cover since it feels remarkably peaceful compared to the chaos below, which I think is a great attention to detail from Project Aces. The soundtrack is phenomenal and complements the tension of the atmosphere perfectly. Gameplay wise, the level is no laughing matter. Get lazy with your approaches and the AC4 AA guns would love to speak with you regarding the recent stock market fiasco. My only problems with this mission are the length since there are no checkpoints and how far the return line is from the beaches. Again, like Invincible Fleet, there are other missions with similar problems that are noticeably worse, which trivialize these criticisms. Overall, Bunker Shot gets an A tier. Tango Line is one of the most controversial missions of the Ace Combat series, but as a bastion of justice and a completely neutral judge, I have to look at it past these controversies to accurately rate it. In my perfectly uncontroversial opinion, I believe Tango Line is one of the Ace Combat missions of all time.
Man, that's so big.
We'll start with the good. Tango Line has some cool enemy variety and a detailed level design with locations like the VTOL base, air base, and submarine docks. These are fun and interesting to blow up sometimes. Okay, now on with the bad. The targets are spaced 3 light years away from each other, and the return line might as well be on a different mission. You spend probably like 50% of this level resupplying or flying to the next target you have to destroy, with nothing but the occasional escort or watchtower to keep you interested. And the soundtrack, while it's fitting for the level, gets annoying after a while since it loops every 2 minutes. And this mission is 20 minutes long, minimum. No checkpoints, by the way. Oh, you died with 2 minutes left? That stinks, man, that really does. The Stonehenge fire, which we're finally warned about, thanks I guess, improves this level a smidgen, but it still gets stale and annoying after the first couple of waves. Just overall, there are so many design choices that completely wreck this level for me, despite some of the highlights. Surprisingly, even if it's in low D tier, I don't think it's the worst mission in the game. There is worse. Much worse. In my opinion, while it is a quick and fairly simple level, Escort is one of the most underrated missions of AC4. I say this because I believe it is the turning point for Mobius 1's character arc, from that of an extraordinary threat to a full-fledged deity. Who cares about Stonehenge? This is peak Mobius 1. It's here that you begin to push back the illusions not physically, but mentally. Everything that comes with this mission perfectly complements that feel. The soundtrack is one of the most slept on in the series, especially that second climax. Unfortunately, the mission is just so short that I had to wait to kill the last person just to hear it. Otherwise though, it contends for one of the best tracks in AC4. The dialogue captures the desperation of flight crew perfectly, but also their full belief that you'll get them out of this alive. Ace Combat 4 is often known as a charming Ace Combat, but like the narrator's story, it can really capture that dark reality of war just as well. And while the gameplay is simple, it still manages to keep you engaged and immersed in the situation. There's no understanding how much I love this mission, but it's just so short and lacks some other things, so I'm putting it in B tier. And so we finally make it to Stonehenge, which has been built up since the beginning of the game as ISAF's nemesis and the main super weapon of the illusions. Does this mission live up to the hype? In my opinion, it honestly kind of falls short. First and foremost, the gameplay of this mission seems like a missed opportunity. The big threat should be Stonehenge, yet in all my years playing this game, even as a little stupid child with zero situational awareness, I don't think I've ever died to Stonehenge itself. Instead, as with almost every other ground attack mission in AC4, the real danger lies in the AA guns and SAMs. Granted, it was designed to destroy asteroids, so it's likely to be effective against fighters at close range, but man, the threat in the long foreshadowed mission cannot be the same thing I find in every other mission in the game. Stonehenge's fire literally just serves as a meaningless aura farm, especially with that opening cinematic. Speaking on the turrets as targets themselves, they're just way too easy to destroy. A single unguided bomb or a couple of well-placed missiles renders them powerless. There's something you can do in a single pass if you do it properly. Why give me 3 different targets, one of which is almost impossible to hit, if I only need to destroy one? The mission update doesn't really save it either. The fight can be fun and progressive the Yellow 13 vs Mobius 1 arc, but it has problems in that it either takes 2 seconds or 15 minutes. Regardless of all these problems, the mission itself is still imposing, with a great environment and soundtrack that capture the feeling well. Overall, looking back at this mission, I feel like I could have been way better, but it was probably hurt by the technology of Ace Combat 4, given how super weapons are generally better in the later installments in the series. For those reasons, I'll give it B tier, but I can't really justify A tier since it doesn't live up to the hype for me. Sorry, Stonehenge fans. Well guys, we did it. We destroyed ISAF's nemesis. I guess it's really time to push back and liberate cities under illusion control one by one in a grueling campaign. What's next? Liberating Los Canas? Let's see our mission orders. What the fuck? If you couldn't tell, I'm not the biggest fan of this mission, but it's by no means terrible. I just don't enjoy flying around destroying blimps. The mission update is cool and again develops Mobius as a literal god, so it saves this mission from gameplay slop. The environment, it gets boring to look at after a while, but the soundtrack is actually really good and one of my favorites from 4. Also, Megalith mentioned, but at this point you literally don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Either way, it's not that good of a mission, but not overly terrible, so I think I'll put it in C tier. Okay, destroying those blimps is weird, but now I think we finally get to destroying some... Again, for the most part, I don't enjoy destroying some missiles, but the atmosphere for this mission actually makes it kind of enjoyable, especially the soundtrack. It's fairly substandard gameplay wise, and the last super maneuverable missile is kind of a kick in the nuts. Just spam a bunch of missiles and eventually you'll get it. Something I appreciate about this mission are the Easter eggs like the stealth fighters and the supersonic bombers, which I think elevate a boring mission to a somewhat interesting one. Emphasis on the somewhat. You still have to fly around the entire map to find them. Still, it's not something I enjoy on replay, nor is it really any more engaging than some levels, so I think it's again more of a C tier mission, but I do think it's better than Safe Return. Emancipation is my favorite non-boss mission in AC4. This mission has pretty much everything you could ask for. Story, gameplay, soundtrack, environment, and some difficulty too. The intersection between the narrator story and our campaign makes the mission more engaging for me, since I always think of that kid that was finally able to see the pilot who could go head to head with Yellow 13. Speaking of yellows, their inclusion here I think is a good way to showcase the Erusian's downfall, especially with Sky Eye calling every yellow kill you get.
Got a yellow.
The enemy variety is good but nothing crazy, but unlike some other score attack missions, the distance between the different targets feels reasonable. The soundtrack is top tier and one of my favorites from the Ace Combat series as a whole, serving as a great addition to the well-designed nighttime city environment. Back in the day when I played this on the old CRT, I could barely see anything in this level, but it honestly just made it more fun for me. The Bobber mission update is nothing crazy either, but then again, I think just a good representation of the Erusian desperation at this point in the war. Just one of the missions I associate most strongly with Ace Combat 4's greatness. It kinda does everything to a really good degree, but not anything crazy, but I think it's still so good that it deserves S tier. In rating other missions, I foreshadowed a mission that was worse like no other. Well, here it is. Whiskey Corridor is quite possibly the worst mission ever created in Ace Combat history, but telling you this will not explain my plight. I want to preface this by saying that I probably have personal beef with this mission since I was 12, so this might be affecting the ranking, but still, looking at the mission objectively does not help its case at all. First, the gameplay. You think enemy spacing was a problem in Tango Line? Try again, buddy. In Whiskey Corridor, we place every group of enemy in every extremity of the map, so you have to fly for 10 minutes doing absolutely nothing. Wait for some cool enemies at least. We got tanks, howitzers, and maybe the occasional pillbox, which are cool because they require one more missile to destroy. Wow. Other than that, we got AA guns that are literally manned by clones of the American Sniper. The cool locations are tents, Goldberg Crater, which has a single enemy in it, and headquarters, which look like a university library. Even though it's the same length as Tango Line at 20 minutes, dying in this mission is somehow 100 times worse of a feeling. This mission just has nothing to go for it. It's almost like it has all the downsides of the previous score attack missions, but nothing to make up for it like Tango Line's enemy variety or design, Emancipation's story elements or atmosphere, or Invincible Fleet's threat. The desert warfare atmosphere is the only thing that is somewhat redeemable, mainly because it looks like the developers had PTSD from the Gulf War when they made it. I feel like a lot of people will say it's an immersive mission too, but you can literally say that about any level in Ace Combat. Even if the atmosphere is fitting, at the end of the day, Ace Combat's a game, so you should be making the game fun to play first and foremost. The mission goes straight to the bottom of D tier. I'm sorry, there's literally no redeeming this level for me. It might be the worst mission in this tier list. Sorry to my Whiskey Corridor fans. If you are a Whiskey Corridor fan, seek help. A prelude to the final mission of 4, Barbani is a very solid mission to end the war. It has everything you need in a score attack mission. It has great dogfighting, good level design, and a solid soundtrack to tie it all together. Particular emphasis on the environment and level design. Some of the bridges and skyscrapers are fun to play around, especially the submarines in the sunken city. The only thing I would have hoped for in this mission is a little bit more enemy variety and density. The Yellow Squadron fight is a great, bittersweet conclusion, but it could have used a different song. They're also kind of free and pull these cobras for no reason. Regardless, Barbani is good, but it can feel a bit empty for a penultimate mission, so I'm going to give it a B tier. Well, we made it to the final mission of Ace Combat 4, Megalith. And what a mission to end it off. The greatness of this mission can be felt literally everywhere, from the silent briefing, to the famous hangar speech, all the way to the end of the mission. The intro cutscene in particular is a great way to really contextualize what's happening because of Megalith, and it transitions so well into the start of the mission with the new Mobius Squadron. The soundtrack, Anya's Day, is easily a top 3 track of the series, and it's one I listen to constantly outside of the game. The gameplay is no laughing matter either. The new Yellow Squadron is dog water, but they're actually a very engaging diversion. Their dialogue really captures the desperation of the Erusians and their futile attempt to stop you from ending their meaningless revolution. The rest of the level are the tunnel runs, which are actually a little tight and can be difficult if you rush through it. It's definitely among my favorite tunnel runs in the series. This mission packages everything I would want from a final mission, and it so happens to be my favorite Ace Combat mission of all time. If I had to show someone 3 levels from the Ace Combat series to get them interested, Megalith is undoubtedly one of them. It's literally perfectly directed and executed. There's not much more glazing I can do for this level, so this is instantly going into S tier. Moving on to Ace Combat 5, we have the first mission, Shorebirds. On its own, I think it does practically everything right. It has a good premise, simple gameplay, and a solid soundtrack. I like the opening cutscene as it's nice having some interesting personalities and not having to carry an entire air force for once.
Radio failure!
There's nothing about this level that I dislike really. In comparison to other first missions though, this one just seems a bit plain is all. I feel like most first missions do a much better job at introducing the game in a more interesting way. I would say it's the definition of an average mission, so I'll go ahead and put it in C tier. What if we just copy-pasted shorebirds but added completely stationary UAVs? It's forgettably short and too similar to the previous mission. There's nothing about this level that is interesting except for maybe the heartbreak cutscene at the end. But I only like that because you get to laugh at Nagase. D tier it is. Funny enough though, I would rather play this mission over playing Whiskey Corridor any day. A lot of people dislike Narrow Margin for how robotic the waves are and for how long the mission is compared to others in AC5. I personally don't mind it. I always enjoy a mission with a tense, almost realistic atmosphere with some great dialogue, if you ignore the phantoms of the squadrons talking when you wipe them out too fast. The gameplay could be better of course, but it's really not that bad. Although I hate these Nimrods in the second part. It's an apt name for them for sure. The most evasive aircraft you will ever see. Speaking of the second part, the mission update really feels out of place because it's practically never done like that again in AC5. Other than that, the environment is cool and the soundtrack is solid for me. Nothing else to really complain about. I give it a C tier, feel like we miss out on some good gameplay and unfulfilled potential. I really love this mission because it does every component of Ace Combat very well. The opening cutscene is just perfect. I always love taking off during an air raid, and I definitely think it's the best cutscene that does this in the series. The dialogue does a great job of adding to that atmosphere. The soundtrack is one of the best in AC5 for sure, and it's often used to represent Ace Combat outside the game, like when it was played in the 2024 Tokyo Olympics. The gameplay is good, although you can get these weird spots where nothing spawns because you wiped out the waves really fast, and it produces a narrow margin like situation where the enemies are talking but they really shouldn't be. The problem with this mission and the missions before it is that you're stuck with the F5 even on New Game Plus, which is just lame. Locking a player with the same plane for multiple missions is never fun. Other than that, just a great mission all around. I think I'll go ahead and give it an A tier. We're getting French out here. Rendezvous is a great mission to introduce the Synfaxi and its burst missiles. It really does just come out of nowhere. Getting jumped by the squadrons is cool too, although someone really has to do some background checks on the Department of Homeland Security for Osea. Like, fellas, how are we missing that? Also, screw these F-35s that launch anti-ship missiles from across the globe, man. Has anyone ever stopped this from happening? Otherwise, the environment and soundtrack are fitting. Another solid B tier mission for me. The first of a two-part mission. Don't get your hopes up though, the next part's in like 20 missions. I have to say though, this one is the worst one in terms of gameplay, but it isn't a big slight on this mission because part 2 is just very fun to me. The first phase has you destroying airborne tanks and their transport planes, which is fine. The second part though has you actually running around like a madman trying to destroy missiles before they hit your mass driver. You can stop these missiles by destroying the B2s, but they're often so far away from the missiles and are actually difficult to destroy without long-range anti-air special weapons, which you won't have unless you're on New Game Plus. Controversial, but I kinda like it. It's the most engaged you'll be playing an early Ace Combat mission. All that being said, we're once again, and not total of it, locked to a plane that you choose for the previous mission, so it might be unfortunate for you. For that reason, I'll give it a B tier, but part 2 clears for sure. Rip the nuggets or whatever, but in all honesty, I do not care. I really love this mission because you get to fight alongside a super weapon, which is almost unheard of in Ace Combat. Glory to Osea, the only country where this is possible. The beginning of the mission is nothing to write home about, but it transitions well into the amazing second part with the Arcbird. Being able to fight them when their burst missiles can't carry them anymore and hearing them panic is one of the most satisfying feelings in the series, period. The Synfaxi fight itself is nothing too crazy, but it's still enjoyable. The environment is just water, so nothing there, but the soundtrack for both parts are great, and the Synfaxi theme goes as hard as always. Frontline gets a strong A tier from me. Radar mission, need I say more? This one sucks too because you're guiding a literal brick, so you can't speedrun it like the other radar missions. That being said, don't think I've ever failed this mission before, so there's that. The interceptors are neat and provide some depth to the context of the mission, but it's ruined when I have to destroy wind turbines. I mean, like, was this mission sponsored by Exxon or something? D tier. Operation Bunker Shot was one of the best missions of 4, but I really wish I could say the same about 5's counterpart, Lit Fuse. Instead of a DIY close air support mission, we are forced into a recurring theme of Ace Combat 5 missions, random gimmicks. Don't get me wrong, some of the gimmicks are fun, but most are boring or too static to be considered good, and there are a lot of them. Lit Fuse's gimmick is that you fly around like an idiot until the target you're supposed to destroy appears, then you go back to flying like an idiot, rinse and repeat. There aren't enough targets for you to be occupied or really stressed about silencing the bunkers. It's such a waste of an otherwise good level with some nice dialogue, environment, and soundtrack. What the hell is this intro cinematic about though? Bro thinks he's Stonehenge. To D tier it goes. I really hate putting this mission down here. I think it could have been so good. After the disappointment that is lit fuse, it's nice to play Blind Spot to get rid of the bad aftertaste. Here you're first introduced to a form of Belkan witchcraft and actually have to use visual contact to confirm your targets, which is one of the simple, neat gimmicks from 5. Otherwise, the escorts are a good distraction, and they make for some solid gameplay. The dialogue and overall atmosphere of the mission are on point, representing one of my favorite perks of 5 compared to other games. It actually feels like some of the characters in my game have a personality.
Die, you SOB!
I usually don't bring up enemy aces, but the ace on this mission is just really fun to try and get, because you have to be pretty efficient with your time to avoid having one of the transports escape. Just a good mission all around, but it doesn't do anything exceptionally well, so I'm going to go ahead and put it in B tier. The random dialogue at the beginning of Blind Spot turns out to be a coin flip determining your mission 11. Win a chain reaction or reprisal. Starting with chain reaction, I think it's a good mission in all respects, gameplay, story, and atmosphere. I really like that you can see the airliners themselves, which I think is a neat detail we don't see often. The premise of the mission is cool as well. I think chain reaction's a solid B tier for me. It's good, but it could use more exciting gameplay. Reprisal, on the other hand, is surprisingly disliked by most people, but I honestly think it's one of the funnier experiences of the series, if I was in a psychiatric ward. The whole gas gimmick thing is uncommon in the series, and most of them are fine with the exception of Time Limit, which is beyond the scope of this video, thankfully. The atmosphere is great, and I especially love the banter between the police. I like the police chase too, and the random shit they throw at you, but it's nearly impossible to slow down enough to get a good view. Unfortunately, 90% of this mission is flying around aimlessly, which brings it down from a funny experience to a not so funny D tier one. Your mission is once again decided by a coin flip, leaving you with either Powder Keg or 4 Horsemen. Powder Keg is unproblematic for the most part, and it's actually sometimes fun to play because of the surprise SAMs. I think the ambush at the final ammo dump is diabolical in particular. In all honesty though, this mission is quite boring once you understand the hidden SAMs, and all that's left is to annoyingly turn to get the right angle for the ammo dumps. The atmosphere feels like a Minecraft jungle biome, and the soundtrack has an eerie resemblance to Tango Line, which is ugh. One of the highlights from this mission though is when Nagase chews out Chopper for being annoying.
Chopper, you're getting a little annoying. Concentrate on your mission.
I give Powder Keg a C tier, it's just mostly boring for me. 4 Horsemen is one of the more controversial missions since a lot of people hate the first part where you have to sync your attacks with your wingman. Is this a safe space? I'm going to be vulnerable here and say that I actually really like the first part of the mission. It's one of the AC5 gimmicks that I actually enjoy, even if it requires a lot of flying around aimlessly. It's a nice change of pace compared to the previous missions, although I can definitely understand why people would hate it. There's just something so conflicting about it with the typical Ace Combat core of blowing things up that makes it so revolting yet intriguing at the same time. The second part of the mission is actually somewhat enjoyable. Watching the Ukes panic is always funny. Atmosphere wise, it has definitely something there. I mean, I'm not really sure. Overall, I think 4 Horsemen is a fun mission. Maybe you'll hate me for it, but I really think it deserves a B tier. I'll play this mission over Powder Keg 9 times out of 10. The one time only because I've played 4 Horsemen 9 times in a row. Imagine humiliating the Synfaxi so bad that its cousin had to change its name and move halfway across the world to avoid being sunk. That's the Hrimfaxi, and if we ignore how the Ukes got permission from Estevakia to shoot missiles over its airspace, we get a pretty cool setup for Mission 13, the Demons of Rosgrees. Gameplay wise, it's a little more difficult, but it's more engaging than its Synfaxi counterpart. No Arkbird this time around either, so it's just you and your murderous intent. That being said, I don't understand why we had to frame this mission as stealthy in the briefing with the circle of picket submarines. When I was a kid, I tried this mission several times over because I always thought there was some secret way to penetrate the barrier without alerting the Hrimfaxi. The fight has UAVs which are annoying, but I feel like your squad mates actually do a decent job at distracting them, so they're not too bad. Atmosphere wise, this mission is top tier for Ace Combat 5, and the Hrimfaxi track is one of the best boss themes in the series. The setup and spot on execution of this mission though, I think is a good reason to give it A tier, but it lacks the aura to get it to an S tier boss mission. Come on, Nagase, lock in. Anyway, Ice Cage is a fairly standard level with the soundtrack and atmosphere I really enjoy. Big emphasis on the soundtrack as well, literally might be one of my favorite tracks, and is definitely among the most underrated tracks in the series. The dialogue is interesting to listen to as well. Otherwise, the gameplay is boring since it's just a lot of flying around, twiddling your thumbs. I don't particularly like having to seek out the patrol squadrons either. As always, it's funny to watch Nagase get shot at though. Unfortunately, it isn't enough to get it out of the depths of C tier. Sorry. After Nagase trolls, the next rescue mission is White Noise, which is slightly more interesting than Ice Cage. It includes what I think is the first introduction to the detectors found in later Ace Combat missions. Not really sure though, I haven't really played the first 3 Ace Combat games, so. Compared to Ice Cage, there's a little bit more to do instead of flying around, with the whole detector gimmick and the escorts that fly around as a diversion. That being said, this mission's just kinda boring. The atmosphere is pretty good, but I don't really remember the soundtrack at all. Overall, just another C tier mission. In Desert Arrow, you kind of pull a Whitebird Part 1 by trying to go back and forth to help your allies advance on their targets. The big thing about this mission is that it's very long and drains your ammo, and there's no return line. A lot of people don't like this, but I actually really enjoy it. You have to think about and use your ammunition very effectively, though I do understand some of the criticisms, especially when you really run out of ammo. The desert environment is executed well in Arrow, and the soundtrack is very good. The dialogue is also interesting to listen to and serves as a good distraction for the little downtime you have during the mission. I really like Arrow, but I understand why a lot of people don't like it, so I'm compromising it and giving it an A tier. Fuck you, this is my tier list. In Desert Lightning, you pull a less intense and engaging version of Arrow. I mean, this was to be expected. We do replace mobile air-to-air targets with stationary ground ones. As a result, I think it's just fundamentally less engaging. Either way, the level's still enjoyable, and I think the Battleship mission update for this one is actually way better than the one for Arrow. The desert environment is just as good, but I like the soundtrack better for Arrow. The mission update makes it close, but I don't think it's on the same level, so I'll give it a B tier. Mission 17, Journey Home, starts off with such an innocent and joyful experience to quickly become one of the most desperate and dark situations Ace Combat has posed on its players. The mission begins with a celebratory flyby, something that hasn't been done in Ace Combat since as far as I know, and it definitely gets you in an immersive mode. That setup, however, is just made to completely rip it apart with the unending waves of enemies that gradually show up over time, which slowly descends the battlefield into chaos. This mission is one of the few that really accomplished that feeling of helplessness up until Chopper's death. Post-Stadium incident, the setup fits perfectly with the anger that wells up in you after his death. Not sure if this is 100% true or not, but it feels like the enemy AI is nerfed to make it feel like you're playing past your limits. To tie it all together, the soundtrack and environment of the mission are absolutely phenomenal. 07 to my yapping squad mate, you'll never be forgotten. Journey Home gets an easy S tier for me, and it might be my favorite AC5 mission. Fortress is kind of a sleeper mission because you're too shocked with the grief that is Chopper's horrible demise. Looking past that grief though, you notice an actually enjoyable mission that has some great atmosphere with the infamous Kruik Fortress. Despite the lack of setup for it, it feels like a foreboding boss that you've known about since starting the invasion of Yuktobania. The gameplay is pretty fun, especially covering your ground allies as they pierce through the walls. One thing though is that I always hear about these enemy aces, but I never really see them because the mission is just so short, or they're just trash, or they're dead by the time I'm ready to shoot them down. Regardless of that nitpick though, and the fact that it's a little short with a repetitive soundtrack, this mission is solid in all respects. I think it's another B tier for me. Behold, in 8492 it was the Belkans all this time. As much as it might seem obvious now, I think this is the first real Belkan intervention we've seen in any modern Ace Combat game. It's introduced in a very cool way as you get jumped by the 8492 squadron using the same technology in blind spot, which I think is a cool callback if you're able to make that connection. The mission itself can be played in one of two ways. You try to destroy everything, which is actually really difficult, or you turn tail and book it for the return line. I really only do the latter because the Belkans are very robotic and annoying to fight. Either way, this mission is pretty tense in gameplay and atmosphere. That being said, it's a short mission and it's technically a mission update for Fortress, so I'm gonna go ahead and give it a C tier. The infamous tunnel mission final option has some haters, and it's for good reason. It's just following an incredibly slow pops through a very scripted and uneventful joyride through an island. The 8492, also known as the recently revealed Grab Our Squadron, doesn't shoot at you unless you climb like an idiot, so there's no real need to go fast. That being said, not like you have the choice anyway. The only cool parts about this mission are the dialogue and the tunnels you fly through, but that alone isn't enough to carry this mission out of the D tier I'm going to put it in. After playing through Ace Combat 5 several times, this mission has really only gotten more boring for me. It sucks because I think they captured the tension of being pursued pretty well in 8492, just to have the pursuit become lame the mission after. The intro cinematics and setup for this mission are actually pretty decent though, but again, as a mission it just kinda sucks. To D tier it goes. Ancient Walls is so mid, I'm not gonna lie. Starting off with the good, the environment, especially Steer Castle, which will reappear in Zero, is really cool and the soundtrack is nice to listen to. That's about where it ends because this mission itself is just You have an infinitely spawning gunboat and anti-air weapons that just sort of show up every now and then. You also blow up a castle wall, I guess, which is neat. The Barracudas that show up later on are a nice addition to the difficulty, but it really doesn't save this mission from a fate of complete and utter averageness. You'd think the Belkans would put more effort into hiding Harling, at least more than just putting them in a castle on the border. To C tier you go. Solitaire is another radar mission, although this one actually emphasizes stealth and recon, which I think is a great way to go about this type of mission. There's also a cool addition with the altitude changing the extent of the radar. The whole reconnaissance part is cool and I wish we would get more missions of this type. The atmosphere is there, I guess. The dialogue is standard, although the moment you're backed up by your squawk is a great feeling. That being said, this mission is possibly the shortest mission in Ace Combat. It simply doesn't have enough to feel like a mission sometimes. For these reasons, I'll put Solitaire in C tier. Haha, yay, we're back at Mount Sherm and here we're to shoot 3 billion missiles at a mountain. Let's go. As lame as it sounds, Closure is not that bad of a level in my opinion, with a decent enemy variety and a stellar soundtrack. Atmosphere wise, it's a bit standard, although there's little tension with the wee little Belk and nuke problem. Destroying the rock bed feels gimmicky and lame, but it's kinda funny I guess, so that sorta makes up for it. The dialogue in this level is also good, excluding the swordsman yapping session. Other than that, the level just feels a bit uneventful, so I think I'm also going to put this one in C tier. The concept of Ghosts of Rosgreaves is pretty cool, a canyon run with an altitude restriction. Execution wise, it's not as great. The canyon itself can be annoying to traverse, but it wouldn't be so bad if it was at least difficult. The canyon is wide as hell and it gets boring to move through sometimes. The enemies are unexciting, and the often you're fighting the mission update is way too scripted and robotic to be fun. The context of the mission is cool though. A bunch of grad students disabling a city leveling nuke is funny as hell.
It's powering up the trigger circuit!
The atmosphere is similar to Closure with the whole nuke situation, but it doesn't feel that immersive, nor is the soundtrack very memorable. Also, Bartlett re-mentioned, I guess. All in all, C tier it goes. Ah, the long-awaited sequel, and it might be worth the wait. Whitebird Part 2 comes with a tense fight with the occupied Arcbird. Design-wise, I think the Arcbird is the most interesting of the aerial super weapons, and its fighting tactics during this mission really bring out some of the glory. I love the engine design, especially the final engine that you destroy in their last-ditch effort. It looks otherworldly and futuristic. It sucks that it looks so cool because fighting it isn't as interesting. The laser weaponry can be difficult while avoiding fire from the UAVs, making the fight just a little bit more engaging, but overall I feel like you have to constantly pull off this circular maneuver in order to get a good angle, which can get annoying at times. This is a problem with most Ace Combat aerial cruisers though, so I won't bring it down too much for that. Other than that, the mission's pretty short, but it's incredibly tense with a short mission time. The soundtrack's also phenomenal. It could be a bit more complex, but as it stands, I think it's a solid B tier. Ever wanted to feel like a cuck in a power fantasy fighter jet game?
What?
Well, in Heartbreak 1 we get pretty close. We just have Bartlett aura farming and showing off his ultra masculine qualities while we chud betas do all the work destroying the checkpoints. The whole choose your own adventure gimmick of this mission really isn't that engaging as you would think. Just choose the shortcut every time because it's a bit faster and not that much more difficult. Again, a lot of flying around here waiting for checkpoints to show up. If all that wasn't mediocre enough for you, the grab arc fight might be the lamest Ace Squadron battle in the series. You literally just feel like some regular enemy fighters, and it's quite a disappointment. I think it's a combination of their easy to read AI and a lack of personality from the members themselves. I mean, we really don't see any of the grab arc characters get fleshed out. All I know is there's a guy named Ashley, and he probably got bullied in school for having that name. Other than gameplay, the atmosphere is blue, and the soundtrack is eh. Heartbreak 1 gets D tier. This shit's kinda ass, I'm not gonna lie. Finally, we have a mission that's actually good, and by good, I mean phenomenal. The build-up and context of Sea of Chaos is second to none in the series, with the great cutscene showing the Uke ships defecting after a fleet commander destroys a ship for insubordination. The context of this mission isn't the only good thing, the gameplay is actually really fun and the ships can be difficult if you don't lock in. The mix of carrier jets and stealth fighters is always a nice diversion as well. The atmosphere and dialogue of this mission are unmatched in AC5 and are top tier in the Ace Combat series as a whole, really capturing that chaotic nature not knowing who are allies and who are enemies. Okay, maybe a bit dramatic, just check the minimap bro. Captain Anderson playing Journeying Home for this mission soundtrack is unique and makes this mission all the more emotional. This mission is also the best for farming kill rate for your planes if you need it. Probably a top 3 mission in AC5, so it gets an S tier for me. The string of the last 3 missions of Ace Combat 5 are one of the best lineups of missions in Ace Combat history. Aces is probably my favorite of them, with one of the most engaging context, gameplay, and music in the series. The cutscene with the Kestrel sinking and our new Osean Yuktabanian friends, shout out to Goat Okunieba, is super cool and a great continuation of the whole message from Sea of Chaos. The dialogue is on point with a wide variety of messages, especially after you open the tunnel. The reporters here actually have so much to say, and I never listen to it because I'm busy going full throttle into the tunnel run. Speaking of tunnel runs, this one's my favorite of the series. Blazing by Bartlett from the other side while getting chased by Hamilton is crazy, and I think the soundtrack during it fits it so well. The other parts of the gameplay are good too, although not as interesting as the tunnel run. Atmosphere wise, Suit Enter looks great, and the whole soul blowing up shit in the background is a nice touch to add to that feeling. Just a perfect penultimate mission for me. Aces also gets an S tier. Ah, a bittersweet ending for AC5. Unsung War, while not as great as the previous two missions, is still an appropriate send-off for the game. We start by taking off from a 6-lane highway from what looks like a Chicago replica in Alred. I mean, that's literally the Sears Tower, is it not? The city itself looks great though, and the music for both parts of this level are perfect. The off-near grab arc fight is cool but executed poorly. It has that same problem of being too easy as with the previous fights, but it's a little better here because destroying them really quickly actually serves a purpose. If you take them down fast enough, you get sentimental dialogue between your squadmates reminiscing about their experiences through the war, which really humanizes them and makes that final soul fight so much more powerful. The soul fight itself is good, and then the broken parts falling as you take down the panels is a cool and dynamic way to make the fight against a stationary, completely defenseless target just a little bit better. All that being said, I can only feel like this level has missed potential. The dialogue shouldn't be secret and instead should be playing as you head over to the drop point. The grab arc off-near fight should be happening just as the soul lands, so it actually feels like you're running against the clock. As it is now, we really lack that engagement and difficulty that you would expect from a final mission. I never break a sweat destroying the soul, discounting flying through the central tunnel of course, because I know I have so much time. Overall, this mission has some missed opportunities, but it's still very solid. We end Ace Combat 5 with an A tier for Unsung War. Glacial Skies is easily the best opening mission in the Holy Trilogy. We're introduced to our buddy with a sick intro sequence before we are thrown straight into gameplay. The gameplay itself is fairly standard, it's just another bomber intercept mission, but the intro sequence still makes this one of my favorite missions in the Ace Combat series. The music and atmosphere of the snowy mountains is great as well. It doesn't quite have what it takes to make S tier due to its simplicity as a first mission, but it's a solid A tier all around. Annex is a pretty standard mission. You really shouldn't expect too much from a second mission, but I do feel like it's overly average. The gameplay is alright and a good intro to the ground targets, and the whole neutral target thing is expanded on pretty well, like this house. Music and atmosphere are alright, nothing crazy. Overall, just another average C tier mission. Our first intro into the roundtable is a pretty decent one. I think it introduces the infamy well. That being said, I do have problems with this mission. First, it's a bit short, but this is an overarching problem with Zero. That being said, I can't really ignore it here. Second, the mission update is poorly initiated, since you could just start it by accident if you go over an unmarked line on the map. You can miss out on S rank this way if you don't destroy enough non-TGT aircraft before the update. This is a bit of a nitpick, but other than these complaints, the mission is solid. Great air-to-air action, really showing how much the AI improved from 5. In terms of atmosphere, the soundtrack is very good, and the desolation of the roundtable itself is very well executed. As far as the different variants of this level, which is a new addition with the whole Ace style gimmick of Zero, I don't find too much difference between the Ace squadrons. If I had to rank, I would say Indigo over Rot over Grun. For the remainder of this tier list and for the sake of my sanity, I'll just be rating my favorite variant as a sole representative of the mission as a whole. I rate this mission a B tier. I think the other roundtable missions are more interesting, but it's a good start. Speaking of variants, we have Juggernaut. I think Zero sometimes struggles with making air-to-ground gameplay feel engaging, but Juggernaut is actually a somewhat decent exception, not counting Costner, which is all air-to-air. I like all three variants of the level, although I do think the air-to-ship variant is the most interesting. The most boring one in my opinion is Geldnikos, which is just some oil facilities. We also have the Kestrel and Costner, but it's captained by some no-name bum and not Captain Anderson, my goat. Other than that, the music is good and the atmosphere is alright. All that being said, it's just an average when you look at it, so I think I'd put Juggernaut in C tier. Speaking of much worse ground attack missions, we have Flicker of Hope. This mission is a great example of an air-to-ground level that's just so boring and it's really representative of some of Zero's worst mission design. The ground targets here are just anti-air weapons, which are tasked to destroy so that the transport planes don't get shot down. There are fighters, but they show up later in the mission after you've dealt with most of the anti-air weapons, so there's no real rush to do anything. The atmosphere here is okay, just weird with this encompassing blue filter that is very reminiscent of Heartbreak 1, which in my eyes is generally considered a bad thing. The music itself is not bad, but I can say that for most Ace Combat missions, so, that's not really a positive. Just a boring mission. I think it goes into D tier. It's not as bad as something like Whiskey Corridor, but it's still pretty bad. Diapason is another lame-ass mission, which I'm surprised to see most people enjoy. I get it, we can be all immersed and patriotic about a fictional country and enjoy ourselves in liberating it, but I want to work for this feeling, man. This mission feels like taking candy from a baby. It's just more anti-air weapons and the Belkans panicking in the background. The Belkans just retreat after 5 of their tanks and 2 of their SAMs get destroyed. I don't even do enough destruction to warrant the power fantasy argument. The level itself also just feels so empty. The mission update at least makes the gameplay a little bit more interesting, but it's only because it's funny that Gelb can literally shoot missiles backwards. While I do enjoy some of the aspects of this mission like Directus' design, the music, and the general atmosphere, it's simply not enough to get this level out of C tier for me. I mean, I would put it in B tier, but the complete failure on gameplay just ruins it. Just a super disappointing mission and completely misses that feeling that a Liberation mission has like Emancipation or Grace Maria, albeit the latter has its own problems we'll get into. Bastion is a decent mission, but it definitely suffers from some weird design choices. In Zero, there are missions where you simply just have to reach the designated score and the mission immediately ends, unlike score attack missions in AC4. One of the primary problems with Zero is that it's short, so why have the mission end when you can just let the player continue to fight until the timer ends? Just reduce the mission timer and let them wreak havoc. We see in missions like Fleet Destruction and AC7 give you the liberty of destroying as many targets as you can, raising the ceiling for personnel records and replayability. Additionally, the score target is only enough to destroy 2 of the AA sites in this mission, so we don't even get to see some of the installations. It sucks because I think this mission has everything you need. A great soundtrack, good difficulty, and an immersive atmosphere, even if there's a lot of flying around doing nothing at times. The AA sites are dangerous if you dilly or dally, and I had to restart this mission while recording because I got reckless with my approaches. I even find some of the design on the AA sites to be great, even if they are just towers that hide a bunch of unmarked AA guns. This level really is just wasted potential, so I think it finds a place in C tier. Merlon is a good mission with a standard mix of air-to-ground targets, depending on the variant. The first phase has some interesting dialogue and a phenomenal soundtrack. I believe it to be one of the most underrated Ace Combat soundtracks of all time. Again, as with many Zero missions, the original mission is quite short, but it's interrupted by an attack from Excalibur, the Belkin laser weapon. This elevates the mission from your standard go-kill mission to a tense and exciting escape sequence. The sequence itself is actually quite difficult too. You have to keep a steady speed, otherwise you'll plow right into the laser weapon, which will kill you in a couple ticks. I have one problem with this part, and it's why the laser comes from the sky downwards. How does that work? In the next mission, we find it comes from a tower that's capable of shooting a chemical laser parallel to the ground. How did the Belkins manage this? I think it could have been more interesting if it used a firing pattern from the next mission, or at least kept it consistent. Otherwise, this mission's pretty solid. All 3 variants are good. I think I like Beta the most, but all set around B tier. We found out about Excalibur last mission, and we get to destroy it the very next. Sword of Annihilation is fairly solid for a boss type, but I find that Excalibur itself is a non-threat most of the time unless you really mess up. The jamming facilities are a good implementation, but I wish it was a little bit more complex than just gunning them down. For example, on Ace difficulty, there's an E767 that obscures where the Excalibur fires, which I think is a really cool implementation they should have added for the jamming facilities. Destroying Excalibur itself is cool, although I find that the railway artillery lasers were a missed opportunity. At least they improved upon the concept in Infinity. Anyways, the atmosphere and soundtrack are great, and I love watching it fall to the ground. Looks cool as shit as always, just don't get too close.
Job well done. PJ, don't get too excited and crash, bud.
This level is really representative of Zero's emphasis on aura and hype moments compared to other titles, and overall, I think Excalibur is a solid A tier. We finally arrived to my favorite non-boss mission in Zero and definitely among the games, Mayhem. When raiding Shattered Skies in AC4, I said throwing a bunch of planes and letting the player loose with some great music was a recipe for excellence. Well, in Mayhem, it's no different. It has everything you need and then some. Incredible moment-to-moment gameplay, an amazing soundtrack, and superb dialogue with character development. They took everything that was great about Shattered Skies and just made it better. The intro sequence is cold as hell. The fan service with Pops and Bartlett are a nice touch that really builds that connection with AC5. We see the first signs of Pixie's betrayal. The Ace Squadron battle at the end is just the cherry on top, and they're all somehow very good. If I had to choose, I think Schwartz is my favorite. We humans might never reach perfection, but man, whoever thought this level up might be close. All variants of Mayhem easily hit S tier. This mission is literally flawless. Never ask a Belkin what happened during the Inferno in June 1995. In all seriousness, I always find Ace Combat to be the most interesting when it tackles difficult subjects about war. The Inferno is one of the most prominent of these. We see a stark contrast from the adrenaline-inducing mayhem to an awe-striking what the fuck mission where we see the Allied forces ruthlessly carpet bomb Hoffnung. The dialogue, soundtrack, and overall atmosphere of the mission perfectly complements this. It encapsulates that chaotic nature of war that this power fantasy series often doesn't show. The gameplay itself is pretty standard, just some ground targets and fighters, but it's almost like you can feel the rage of the Belkin forces you fight. In this playthrough, I actually ran out of ammo and I was actually very close to dying multiple times against the last wave of Belkin forces. It literally felt like I was playing a reverse Journey Home, and I was the one that killed Chopper. The Inferno is among my favorite missions in all of Ace Combat. I just think it does such a good job at really playing into the dark reality of the Belkin War, as well as reasoning for Pixie's betrayal in the next mission. It warrants a strong placement in A tier. Stage of Apocalypse ends a string of missions that might be some of the best Ace Combat you'll ever see. We ended off strong with a tense mission to stop a nuclear strike by the Balkans. Everything about this mission is great, from the Balkans fighting each other to the absolute chaos of the nuclear detonation. Even with the limited technology of the era, I really like Zero's implementation of a nuke going off. When Pixie starts firing at you, you actually do feel that sense of betrayal, and honestly it sometimes can get scary if you don't expect it. Finally, I really like the soundtrack and the environment itself. I wish we could see the nuke's crater on Stair Castle, but that part of the map gets cut off, likely due to technology constraints or otherwise. Like Inferno, it's executed very well and gives Zero a lot more depth than other Ace Combat games. Either way, this level is still amazing, and honestly I think it's good enough for a replacement in A tier. Lying in Deceit is quite frankly just a boring mission. I think it was made to acclimate you to having PJ as a wingman, which might be a fate worse than death. Even if it was made to warm you to PJ, he stops talking about his life or his ideals like 5 minutes into the mission, and instead reserves shallow comments for some of the forces you see throughout the level, like some Oblivion NPC.
Well, a place like that has such a large amount of armaments.
The gameplay is just a standard mix of ground and air targets. It's one of those weird score target missions like Bastion where it ends immediately after you reach the specified goal. I've already gone into why I think that's not the best design, but it's not the only thing plaguing this level. In addition to Saring Bastion's poor return line placement, Lying in Deceit is accompanied by a pretty mediocre soundtrack, boring environment, and lazy level variety and design. I don't dock them for using Mount Sherm again, it was probably a resource issue, but man, that is some boring fan service for 5. The only cool part about this mission is the hangar for Hrassvelgr, but it's so tiny and it's impossible to hold such a massive airship. It also has this infinitely respawning AA gun for some reason, so I guess the budget went towards making the last 4 missions good, because this is the worst mission in Zero, D tier. The final overture is not a bad mission by any means, considering what precedes it. It's just a solid go-kill mission, accompanied by some interesting level design. The soundtrack and dialogue are enjoyable as well. The Grippins you fight are actually a little difficult, and I love their little tunnel runway. It really highlights their situation. One of the variants of this mission are some of the only appearances of naval targets other than Juggernaut, which I find neat. Other than that, just a standard average ground attack mission. Not too much going on in each variant, but I think Mars is the best. Either way, they go to C tier. The next super weapon in Zero is Hrassvelgr, and it somehow beats Excalibur by lasting one whole mission. I'm not sure what everyone's opinions are about Hrassvelgr, but personally I find it to be the least interesting and most boring of the aerial super weapon fights. While some may find beauty in its simplicity, it doesn't last long enough or pose much of a threat compared to its counterparts like the Arcbird or Igaion. Just make sure you aren't going 2 miles an hour and the AA shouldn't hit you. The design of the Hrassvelgr doesn't make sense either. It's supposed to hold aircraft, but there's no opening or runway visible. How the fuck does Pixie get out? Just more Belkin magic, I guess. The soundtrack is good, but it's very repetitive and can definitely mellow out any sense of hype you had. On with the good, Espada can be an interesting fight with a neat dynamic and is definitely a highlight for this mission. Other than that, the only other thing I can say is that the intro sequence is cool. Overall, I think it could have been way better, so I'll give it a B tier. Going into the third and final roundtable mission, the Demon of the Roundtable, we are finally briefed on the mystery terrorist organization A World with No Boundaries, and their diabolical plan to get rid of world borders by blowing everyone up and starting over again. How nice. The mission has us engaging a squadron led by one of token black guy, nonchalant night maxer, and a really creepy guy I wish didn't talk as much as he did.
The darkness envelops me in a
Man, shut your
All 3 are pretty fun to play and have their own gimmicks, and all are united by the fact that they can be pretty difficult. The mission is constantly engaging even if there's a single squadron to defeat. The soundtrack and atmosphere is great as well. It really does feel like a test before you enter the final mission of the game. Nothing really wrong with this mission even if it is short, so I think it goes into B tier. It's like the 8492 of Zero. The Valley of Kins can be an interesting mission, but it's definitely overshadowed by the mission after it. Regardless, I think this mission is still pretty good. The intro sequence through the canyon feels really tense and can honestly be difficult with all the AA fire and fighters that are in there with you. The dialogue here is great too. It's really tense hearing all your allies fall one by one in the hopes that you get into the dam complex. Speaking of which, I do think the tunnel section is one of the more boring in Ace Combat, but it's not terribly bad. This mission has a lot of named aces, which can be neat to try and find. Overall, I think it can sometimes fall short, but it feels pretty good regardless. I personally think the canyon run brings it up to an A tier. Zero. Quite possibly the most popular mission in the Ace Combat community, and it's for great reason. The final duel with Pixie is well thought out, and it's only made better with arguably the best soundtrack in the game, and a phenomenal set of dialogue. Starting with gameplay, I find it to be the most exhilarating and engaging dogfight of the series, by far. Pixie shuffles through a variety of tactics through the level to keep the player guessing and adapting to the current situation. The laser makes you keep your speed up, while the MPBM forces you to keep your distance. The final part has you jousting like a medieval knight would, with head-on firing. The only part I never understood is why Pixie activates the ECMP now and not earlier. I mean, it obviously makes sense from a gameplay standpoint. Having him fight head-on with the TLS sounds scary, but it never made sense to me in a logical angle. Either way, all 3 phases are really fun to play against. The atmosphere though is my favorite part of the mission. Zero, in my opinion, is the best soundtrack in Ace Combat history. It's accompanied by the infamous, well-produced set of dialogue that never makes the fight boring. Here Comes the Snow is such a cold line, no pun intended, referencing glacial skies. It really gets you thinking about how far you came and what it all ended up leading to. I really think that the build-up for Zero is some of the best Ace Combat we've ever seen, and I hope we get to see a kindle of that greatness with Ace Combat 8 in the future. Zero inarguably achieves S tier. It is the peak of Ace Combat alongside Megalith. We finally get to the more modern renditions of Ace Combat, 6 and 7. I wanted to preface this before we got into the rankings that I find the more modern Ace Combat missions to generally be more fun than your average trilogy mission. They tend to have better scale, prettier environments, and more engaging gameplay. That being said, considering the technology, this should be expected, so I try to round out and make it more fair for 4, 5, and 0. This process, however, doesn't make Invasion of Gracemeria any less amazing. It's, in my honest opinion, the most fun first mission in the entire franchise. Ace Combat first missions usually follow the standard slow-ass bomber formula. AC6 instead reserves that for mission 2 and instead throws you into absolute chaos over Gracemeria. Like they literally spawn you head to head with the squadron actively shooting missiles at you. I really like this trial by fire kind of first mission. It's by far the most engaging and fun for the player in general. Our first intro to the Igaion and Strigan are great too, although Strigan's reputation will quickly be run to the ground in subsequent missions. The soundtrack and dialogue are on point as well. The camaraderie between AC6 characters is great and will continue to be for the rest of the game. I honestly think Invasion of Gracemeria gets an S tier because of how fun it is, and I haven't even tried the Ace of Aces version. Here's a more normal Ace Combat introduction with Vitose Aerial Defense. It's here that we're softly introduced to the active landing and takeoff mechanic, which is easily the best gameplay addition in 6. Here you don't really land, but it's still cool actively taking off from the runway with no loading or black screen. The introduction of ECM is also straightforward. Other than that, the mission's pretty basic all things considered. The environment is alright and the soundtrack is good. Overall, I think it's a pretty average mission. C tier. Simply Field is a really good mixed air-to-air and air-to-ground battle mission that really shows off the scale of 6. The enemies are really dense and are fun to take out with unguided bombs. Otherwise, the gameplay is pretty standard, although that isn't necessarily a bad thing considering it's the 3rd mission. It's an introduction to the operation mechanic too, which I sometimes hate and I sometimes like. It really depends on the mission. Here you don't really notice too much difference in the operations, but sometimes they blend together because they're too close. The environment is pretty cool, and I always love my snowy levels, but I particularly enjoy the soundtrack as it's one of my favorites from 6. We're also introduced to the recurring ground battalion, which I always find cool in Ace Combat. Just a solid mission in all respects. B tier. The operations mechanic shows its flaws in Bartolomeo Fortress, but that doesn't really make it any less of a great mission. Operations can make it hard to get S rank if you start on multiple operations, since you need to average this rank in order to get it for the entire mission, which I think forces you to only look at a couple of operations. This in itself is fine, but it feels like your allies do absolutely nothing if you're focusing on a single operation. For a game where everyone lauded your allies for being efficient, AC6 allies kinda fall short in this respect. Nobody puts a hand up when Warlock Battalion gets throttled by a gun train while you try to assist Snake Pit against the 50 billion fighters that are coming after him. With the scale and relationship between the pilots of 6, it feels especially infuriating to don excessive main character syndrome and be responsible for every operation in the mission, even if it isn't necessary from a gameplay standpoint. All that to explain a minor nitpick, since everything else about this mission is pretty good.
No, 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 no.
It has a solid enemy variety, density, and scale, as well as a cool environment with the fortress and the surrounding mountains. The soundtrack is phenomenal too. A lot of people don't like the orchestral slow soundtrack of 6, but I find it appropriate for how large the scale of the battlefields are. Man, that was a yapping session just to say it's good. I'll place it in B tier. Anya Landing showcases some of the problems with 6, some of them being excessive repetitive scale and extremely long and cumbersome gameplay. Despite this, it's still a solid mission, just with some problems. This is like the 3rd mission in a row that we're subject to a long ground attack operation. And while I do enjoy these missions for the most part, it can get a bit boring after a while. I know I said I didn't like most of the AC5 gimmicks, but some were actually good and they really shook up the gameplay so it didn't feel the same every time. Other than that, I also find the map and enemies to be really spread out in this mission in particular. You can definitely feel this with all the empty flying around you'll do to get back to the return line. You can also do the operation to capture the airfield, but it's in one corner of the map for some reason, so I don't really find a point half the time. I do, however, like landing it during battle, and it's one of my favorite feelings in 6. The soundtrack and atmosphere are nothing interesting in particular, but I do really like the design of some of the oil fields and refineries. Overall, I just feel like there are more interesting ground attack missions in 6 and elsewhere. Anya Landing is a pretty average mission in these respects, so I'm going to give it a C tier. Another ground attack mission, that'll be 4 in a row. Siege of Silvat is actually pretty good though because it has a great atmosphere. Saving the besieged allies is one of the greatest feelings in Ace Combat, and alongside the stellar soundtrack, executes the situation perfectly. The gameplay is good as well, especially the mid-siege runway that you can land on to resupply. Some of the enemies are cool too, like the gun trains and lines of tanks. I always appreciated 6's shifting focus to a more detailed battleground compared to the trilogy. The only thing I don't appreciate about this level is Strigan being there. Any Ace squadrons are supposed to be the nemesis for the player. It loses this effect when Strigan is in every other level and gets pounded in every single one. Strigan's implementation is one of my gripes with 6's design. Just look at Yellow Squadron. They show up in 4 missions, but they still retain that fear factor because you can't just down them over and over again until your momentum starts ramping up. Other than Strigan's generational aura loss, I find Siege on Silvat to be quite an exciting ground attack mission in a game that's been 75% ground attack missions. A tier for me. You finally get a break from the ground attack missions with Solemna Peak, and let me tell you, it's a welcome change of the formula. Despite being all air-to-air, Solemna Peak keeps the player engaged with a changing and diverse battleground. I love the enemy variety you get in this level, from the attackers to fighters to subsonic bombers. It keeps you on your toes and helps change the pace of the level to reduce any monotony. The atmosphere is excellent. You're accompanied by a gorgeous mountain landscape that makes great use of the next generation consoles, as well as one of my favorite soundtracks in the series, period. The intro sequence might also be the single hardest cutscene in the series. The only nitpick I have with this level is the Nimbus jump scare in the mission update. The UAVs follow this really weird and robotic path, and it essentially comes down to you waiting until they slow down just before the Nimbus missile hits to fire your missile. Otherwise, have fun spamming allied attacks or putting on your best Kobe impression, because you'll need a lot of luck to do these in any normal amount of time.
You hide it forever. Ricky, when I catch you, Ricky. Ricky, when I catch you, Ricky. Ricky, when I catch you, Ricky.
Despite that, it's still a decent mission update to run at a great level for me. Solemna Peak, I think, is an A tier. Yippee, another ground attack mission. The gameplay in San Loma Assault is pretty standard even compared to the other ground attack missions, the main difference being the fact that you can't approach the city unless you want to get poked full of holes. The Nimbus missiles are there too, but it feels fairly inconsequential. Sometimes I only remember they exist when I see a UAV that just randomly shows up in front of me. I do enjoy this mission's environment and soundtrack, it at least makes it slightly interesting to play. Despite this, I do think it's a bit boring and long compared to the other ground attack missions, so I'm going to go ahead and give it a C tier. I made this tier list after finally completing 6 for the first time a couple months ago on an Xbox that I definitely have. Before then, I had to live with watching playthroughs to experience what 6 is like, and one mission that stood out to me in particular was Heavy Command Cruiser, as it looked like absolute cinema. I was really excited to finally get to play it, and I was more than happy to find out it was just as fun as I thought it was. I think this mission is the best aerial super weapon fight in the series. The complexity you get from the surprise attack and the multiple different battleships with the different roles is just too cool, especially with their awesome designs. Unlike some flying fortresses, they actually have a visible runway that you can fly through if you're a baller. You can also play the mission in 2 ways, choosing it with rockets or actually fighting it properly, and somehow both are equally as fun to do. I don't mind Strigan's implementation here, but in conjunction with every other appearance they have, it tends to lower their status as the player's main opponent. The only gripes I have with this level is that it feels a bit empty dialogue wise, and the fact that fighting any aerial super weapon in Ace Combat has you doing the stupid circular maneuver. That's basically it. Otherwise, it's a fantastic level that is easily deserving of S tier. Hot off the destruction of Aigaon, Ragno Fortress really encompasses that feeling of steamrolling the Estevakians. The gameplay here is phenomenal. All 3 operations are great, but the tunnel one is by far the most engaging and enjoyable. It's a great mini skill check that makes the level really fun to play. The design and enemy variety in the main fortress and the power facilities are well designed and nothing to scoff at either. Unlike levels from Diapason from Zero, you need to work for the mission as there's a bit of difficulty involved with the amount of AA. The atmosphere of this level is also executed perfectly. The environment is awesome. I mean, you're literally fighting a fortress in the middle of the Grand Canyon, so I don't see how it couldn't be awesome. Dialogue is great and really fuels that power fantasy feeling that this mission leans into heavily. The soundtrack is majestic and perfectly complements the atmosphere as well. The only problem I have with this level is that it's kinda easy to start operations that you don't want to, which makes it hard to get S rank. Regardless of that, this is the mission that surprised me the most on my first playthrough, and it's now set the ceiling for an amazing non-boss Ace Combat mission. I hope to see more of this kind in Ace Combat 8. This may be a little controversial, but Ragnar Fortress is the distillation of a near perfect Ace Combat mission, and it gets an S tier for me. This is one of my favorite missions in the series. Our second to last ground attack mission comes with Moloch Desert in Mission 11. I always imagined this to be what Whiskey Corridor should have been. Even though 6 has clearly better scale and technology than 4, this mission still makes an incredibly monotone environment still somewhat fun with its enemy variety. You not only have lines of tanks, but also the airfield, air battalions, and rivers to play around to shake things up. This could have been implemented in Whiskey Corridor even without 6's technology. That being said, this level isn't perfect either. Even with a diverse enemy variety, after a while it does get pretty boring making attack runs at ground targets since there are just so many of them. The main problem I have with this mission is actually the update though. I always think player agency should be considered in a game like this, since most of the destructive power comes from the protagonist. Yet here we are forced to continue the dogfight against Strigan. I'm gonna be completely honest by this point, I am sick of finding Strigan everywhere. They're the most oralist bum ace squadron in the series. Anyways, we're forced to fight because Shamrock wants to do so. I do not care, man, let him crash out, I wanna go home. It simply breaks the experience for me and turns a dogfight into more of another task on the list than a game. It rounds out and makes this mission average, C tier. We all like clowning 5's gimmicks that make up 90% of the missions in the game, but in my opinion 6 needed a little bit more of it. WMD the mission is a great shakeup from the loads of ground attack missions that we get. The level starts with a canyon stealth run, which I actually think would be but in 6 I more than welcomed it, even if it isn't that engaging or complex at all. When you destroy the WMD trucks, the second part of the mission happens to be where most people enjoy it the most, and for good reason. 6 really exploits its scale here by spawning infinite numbers of planes. The music at that part is just so good too, it really captures that gradual growth of the oh fuck feeling. And then finally this part hits.
Looks like we got an all-star cast lined up for this performance.
You ruined it.
It gets corny at times, but I really like the relationships between the pilots of the American Air Force. It's by far the most attached I've been to side characters. The execution of this mission was great, and I really enjoyed playing it for the first time a while ago. The only other thing is the environment, which is just alright. The first phase of the mission could have been a wee bit better, but it's carried by a fantastic second half. WMD the mission gets an A tier for me. For this ranking, I want you to close your eyes and imagine this. You're a chef. You've been preparing the finest meal to ever be consumed by a human being. From birth to butcher, you spend a couple of years fostering a calf in the valleys of Mount Fuji in Japan, which will give you the most succulent, tender Wagyu A5 beef for which to carve into the most perfect steak ever. It will be accompanied by a wine that has been locked away and resting in a smoky, oak barrel for over a millennium in the darkest cave in France. You get the idea. This has taken time. Now continue imagining it. Everything is ready. The steak is perfectly cooked. The wine is sitting patiently in the round glass. The sides, whatever you wanted, it's all there. Think. All the suffering was for this. You can finally reap the rewards of your perseverance, skill, and patience. Everything is perfect. Okay, now watch as a fat pig from your neighbor's barn breaks in and takes the most rancid shit you've ever seen right on the plate. If you can imagine what it might feel experiencing that, you can imagine what it's like playing the Liberation of Grace Maria. There are things you simply can't experience by watching someone play the game, and I learned that the hard way with this mission. Let's start off by focusing on the first half of the mission. It's another ground attack mission, but it's set up so beautifully with a phenomenal series best soundtrack and a dialogue set that pumps you up to finally liberate the city you lost so long ago. Every operation here is great and showcases the diversity and scale of 6's battles. Nothing here is given for free, and you have to work for this liberation, as you have worked for many battles before this one. It is the perfect representation of what 6 is all about. But then, he shows up, and he just ruins everything. The Pasternak fight might be the worst boss fight I have ever seen in my life, and after a decade and a half of playing video games, I simply cannot imagine that it was playtested, because everything about this fight just feels awful. There's literally nothing about this boss fight I have anything positive to say about. Let me tell you what I mean. The UAVs are too maneuverable, so it's near impossible to line up your gun reticle or even think about firing a missile towards them. There are also 116 of them. The best strategy I had for destroying them was breaking, randomly firing my gun, and hoping one of the UAVs who were tailgating me like they were the closeted redneck with a lifted Dodge Ram truck flies past and gets straight. If you're not going for S rank, just go for Pasternak himself. The UAVs are literally there to annoy you, nothing else. If you're going for S rank, have fun spending your evening shooting down 35 of these things. I don't even know why they decided to go UAVs. Literally the entire Strigan team was here, and instead they had this guy Auramax. The boss fight is not enjoyable unless you have the Nosferatu and either the ADMM or EML to cheese it with. The dialogue ends like 2 minutes into the fight, then it's just silence with the occasional AWACS message. The soundtrack isn't even that good either, especially for how long this fight takes. I literally have played this mission before and left it just before the Pasternak fight, just so I can feel something like some junkie. Maybe I'm overreacting, maybe I'm not, and that's up to you. What I do know is that this boss fight ruins a flawless mission for me for absolutely no reason other than what feels like a last minute decision. It brings down a mission that was S tier to A tier for me. I'm sorry, you can argue with me all you want. The fact that I don't want to complete the entire mission is a bad thing. The first time I got to this mission, I found it pretty hard because my fingers were still cramping from the Pasternak fight. Grace Maria Patrol is mission 14, and it's alright. It's a missile intercept mission, although it still manages to make it difficult and interesting by adding stealth fighters into the mix. The night environment and soundtrack are great too. Just my 2 cents, I do think a Strigan fight here instead of at Chandelier would have been peak, albeit you would have to adjust the frequency of the missiles. Otherwise, a solid mission in all respects, although I do feel like my allies do nothing as I've always had to dodge enemy fire while targeting the missiles. Also, this happens.
Monica. Jessica. How could I let this happen?
All in all, B tier. The final mission of 6 is Chandelier, and it contends for the worst final mission in the ranking. It's not a complete sight on this level, it's fairly solid, but it's underwhelming and annoyingly difficult at times. Much of the difficulty will stem from the absolute shitload of anti-air weapons around the cooling units. It's dangerous and outright impossible to approach these units head on. You're kind of forced to make these off-angle guerrilla attacks to make sure you don't get hit. Don't get me started on the warheads either. Those AA guns you can't even target until the mission update tear you to shreds in seconds. I'm fine with the bit of difficulty, this just seems overtuned in my opinion. Also, on the warheads, you don't even have to destroy them for some reason. I just did because I felt bad about the millions of Grace Marians that we were just letting die because we were just a little bit lazy. The famed tunnel sequence are also present, albeit a little linear. They're definitely the most boring of the ranking, but they're still kinda fun to do. Strigan is also there, I guess. The atmosphere is pretty good though, backed by a great environment and a nice soundtrack. A lot of people don't like the soundtrack in particular, but I find it to be oddly chilling and appropriate for the situation. Finally, the dialogue could be better. The AC6 corniness really shines here.
Shamrock! Respond! Marcus! Marcus! All planes, get in there and save him!
Other than that, there's nothing really too noteworthy about this level to talk about. I will say that the Chandelier firing sequence is cold as hell though. It has its moments, but it mostly falls short. B tier. We began with Ace Combat 7's first mission, Charge Assault, which is a return to form from the classic Bomber Intercept mission like the trilogy. These are a great introduction to the series, although I will miss Invasion of Grace Maria dearly. Onto the mission, it's fairly average, all things considered. It's hard to make a simple Bomber Intercept mission fun, especially as a tutorial, but I find it lacks much of the aesthetic found in the good first missions like Sitting Duck and Glacial Skies. We do have an intro cutscene, but it's not that exciting to me. Otherwise, the environment and soundtrack are great. I remember almost shedding a tear when playing this for the first time back when it was released in 2019, ending a near 12-year drought from the last numbered Ace Combat game. Good memories, but it can't save this level from mediocrity. C tier. Something I have to nitpick is the naming of a couple of the AC7 missions, even including some of the ones from 6. They feel so uninspired and boring at times, and even as minimally important as the name is, it tends to make it feel less polished and intentional. Charge of the Enemy is a lame ass name, and it definitely could have taken like 2 minutes to make a better replacement. Off that tangent, Charge of the Enemy is just another average mission. It gives me major imminent threat vibes, but there's no substation on the way there, so it's immediately inferior. It also doesn't have very exciting atmosphere until the mission update, where the infamous drones appear. I love the implementation of AC7 drones, although it's pretty easy to exceed my expectations when the most recent standard was Pasternak's Hellspawn. We also have our first introduction to 7's weather gimmick, but it's mostly aesthetic and doesn't really affect your gameplay that much. Overall, this mission is just alright. It's pretty average, so I'll give it a C tier. Two-pronged strategy, that's the name we came up with? Anyway, this is a pretty fun mission and a great follow-up to the whole drone situation in Mission 2. Mission 3 is a proper introduction to dogfighting, and let me tell you, there is a whole lot of it. The mission really picks up during the update when you get jumped by the the Arsenal Bird, and its army of drones. As much as the drones can be painful to fight at times, the fight doesn't get bad at all, and I do tend to enjoy the initial unrestrained fight against the Arsenal Bird, giving you the feeling like you're actually doing something until that sci-fi force field shows up.
This is fucking bullshit.
Also, shout out Mihai for taking out that absolute bitch biscuit. I will mention that the environment is also beautiful and the mission is accompanied by a great soundtrack. This mission is quite fun at times, so I'll give it a B tier. Another uninspiring name. In Rescue, we're rescuing Harling for some reason. Maybe the evil omnipotent intelligence agency in me is saying to leave him for dead to gain public support for the war. I don't know though. Also, if the mission is so important, why is a rookie picked to navigate the radar? Like bro, I've been on 3 sorties. Regardless, we start off this mission pretty terribly with the radar navigation segment, but I do actually like the implementation of the weather and draft winds to make you readjust your flying. The gameplay on this level is standard as well, a mix of ground targets and UAVs. Salatapura looks great in my opinion alongside the space elevator, and the soundtrack is good so it makes up for a great atmosphere. I also think the whole killing Harling bit was actually done pretty well, keeps the true nature of the incident ambiguous, and makes the reveal later on more potent. Overall, the mission's alright. B tier. Finally, a good name for a mission. 444 is a great symbolic mission name that actually means something. Anyway, meet your new prison friends. Unimportant, forgettable, gambler, anarchist, and count. You're tasked with flying around for like 3 minutes doing nothing because your weapons are locked. Otherwise, this level is somewhat fun and enjoyable. I actually do enjoy the banner between our new squad mates since it's such a contrast from those bums and Golem. The soundtrack is great and the environment looks nice. Just a solid level for the most part. Just hate the initial snore fest, especially on replay. 444 gets a C tier from me. Our first major score attack mission on Long Day is actually quite nice. This level has good enemy variety, design, and spacing. Again, the only complaint I have is with the return line being so far, especially when the wave of UAVs arrive at the end of the mission. Otherwise, there's nothing to say about the environment and the soundtrack is nice. I do like the secret tunnel dialogue though, although it's quite sad that you can miss out on it if someone's yapping while you're doing it.
Wait, so why are you breaking up with me again?
Because I found someone better than you and you're always cheating on me. Like, I had enough of this.
Holy shit, I just hit a clip!
A solid mission throughout. Long Day gets another B tier from me. First Contact is a perfect mission that encapsulates that feeling of looking fun to play, but in reality it's just a pain in the ass. The primary offender here is the environment in conjunction with the weather. It looks great, don't get me wrong, but the draft winds randomly throwing you headfirst into a stone pillar gets unfun after the second or third time. Don't get me started on the Mihai duel though. The lightning strikes serve actually no purpose but to take your hand off your controller and eat some Doritos while you wait for your HUD to come back. Mihai himself just feels a bit too robotic at times too, not to mention his plot armor. But he does make this level fun when you weave through the stone pillars to try and take him down. All that to say, this mission has its moments. There aren't enough of them though to save it from D tier. I kinda hate playing this mission. It's just trying to do too much and it ends up being really clunky to play. I never realized that pipeline destruction was a skill check for a lot of the newer players to Ace Combat, and at this point in the game, I think that's quite a good thing actually. I don't want to gatekeep Ace Combat, but this mission really teaches you proper and efficient loadouts. You will struggle with this level if you bring a fighter with anti-air weapons, for example. The gameplay here requires you to destroy targets constantly, any amount of extended downtime, and you won't hit the score target. The clustered enemies are especially vulnerable to your guns and SP weapons since gas explosions can chain together, making the battlefield more dynamic and interesting to blow up. The soundtrack is awesome as well. Of course, nothing good can come without the bad apparently, as a mission update arrives, tasking you to destroy hidden oil trucks in a sandstorm. The premise seems fine and honestly kinda cool at first, but I think the targets pop up on your radar too infrequently, especially when you're down to the last 5 tankers. Also, sometimes your missiles just miss the tankers, which just pisses me off. Pipeline destruction can be fun, but the mission update kinda soils it for me. B tier. Faceless Soldier absolutely stinks. It might be the worst mission in 7. Everything about this level seems pretty well designed, from the soundtrack, environment, and gameplay gimmick. That is, until you realize that the missiles that you're trying to avoid don't give a fuck about traditional Newtonian mechanics and simply phase through anything to get to you. Trying to S-rank this mission was one of the worst experiences I've had, and unfortunately it's all I can think about when I play it now. The second part is alright, but honestly feels kinda underwhelming even with the Helios projectiles in the cutscene, which I often forget exists. Just a mission plagued by annoying mechanics. D tier. Transfer Orders is another gimmick mission where you have to destroy these SAM sites before they hit your annoying piece of shit commander. It's okay, but I wouldn't say it's fun, just a lot of flying around following missile trails. The mission update with the new UAV is not fun either, just a tinier, more annoying Mihai. I do think it could be cool if you notice the similarities between Mihai and the new UAV, but I'm too stupid so I didn't. Otherwise, kind of a bum mission. D tier. I wonder why they didn't keep the name of the soundtrack for this mission, Siren Song, rather than staying with Fleet Destruction, which is a generic name for an otherwise amazing mission. It reminds me a lot about Ragnar Fortress, where it's a pretty straightforward mission with a solid gimmick that makes it much more dynamic and fun to play. The oil platforms you destroy are a great mechanic that make it super fun to destroy, and I particularly like that you can discover it yourself and be praised for it, which I think is a cool detail they added. There's a lot of potential and replayability in this level that makes it one of the greats for sure. It also has a good soundtrack and a beautiful environment too. Just a great mission, A tier for me. A rehash of Stonehenge Offensive in 4, the mission Stonehenge Defensive has us protecting what we destroyed so long ago to take out one of the Arsenal birds. I actually really love this mission, even if it feels like total fan service, since it really isn't mentioned as a possibility other than this vague reference in Mission 7. The wave system for the enemies keeps you constantly engaged, even if there's a lot of flying around to do. The dialogue, soundtrack, and environment look great. I really appreciate that they modeled the Stonehenge turrets well, so you can actually fly through the crevices they make. The Arsenal Bird mission update is cool too, and I love when the UAVs start to all congregate next to the last Stonehenge turret in a Hail Mary effort to stop it from firing. A great mission that's exceptionally well designed in my opinion, and it's one of my favorites from 7. It gets a solid place in A tier. Bunker Buster is another gimmick mission that has us using a new SP weapon to destroy underground ICBMs. The SP weapon itself is not really fun to use since you kinda have to slow down significantly and stand there while looking at it to fire. It kinda ruins the pacing you would have in a game about fighter jets. Otherwise, the mission update is actually neat and you can easily fail it if you flack off for a couple seconds, which makes it that much more fun to play in my opinion.
Additional launch confirmed. Incoming. Fox 2.
No. Wait.
The soundtrack also deserves a special mention, and it's definitely one of the greatest from 7. As a whole though, it's just an average mission for a gimmick level. Like, I wouldn't even want to replay this mission for the soundtrack because the gameplay is just so mid. C tier for me. We move on to the 3 DLC missions for 7, which have the advantage of being very well invested in and generally more fun to play, although they definitely have shortcomings. I'll try to align my rankings compensating for this fact. The first one is Unexpected Visitor. I didn't quite remember this level at all, but on the second replay I did enjoy it a lot more. The reintroduction of ESM from 6 is great, and it's super fun to play around. I guess Mimic is there, but they're quite possibly the most forgettable antagonist ever, even if it is just in the DLCs. Even now, I don't really understand why they had to exist. It feels like they didn't think the DLCs had enough content, so they just added a dogfight boss. I do like how their theme kinda takes over the main soundtrack though, I thought that was cool. In the end though, this mission is literally just an aerial dogfight with 30 billion planes and an occasional ground force. It doesn't make it unfun to play though in the slightest. I think it gets a solid A tier for me. The second DLC mission is Anchorhead Raid, which is a pretty complex and long ground attack mission. If I had to describe this level in one word, it would be
Missile.
Even if this level just blows out your ears, I still think it's my favorite DLC level. First and foremost, it has my favorite track from 7. This shit goes way too hard. Gameplay wise, the premise of the level is great and it's executed perfectly with the first phase. You get 10 minutes to effectively blow up as much shit as you can before the reinforcements arrive. I love how dynamic it feels as well. You can actually see the ships start moving once they realize what's happening isn't a drill. The only thing I can say here is that sometimes it feels like there's just an army of Sea Whiz, which is not necessarily a bad thing, it just can get annoying. I also do love the little mini side quests you get with the random Erusian military officers. All in all, the first phase is great. The second phase is mostly air to air and has a problem of being a little bit too hectic. It's initially fine, but then the guidance UAVs arrive and they kind of fuck up your day. I think the idea is cool, but honestly the UAVs are either piloted by a 4-year-old or trained using Mobius 1 flight data. And it's honestly annoying to figure out which one you should expect. The whole Mimic boss fight is just the cherry on top, or whatever the opposite of that saying is. It kind of just drags on and gets annoying after a while, especially with the ghost missiles. A lot of what I criticize about the mission, I know it's because it's a DLC, so they kind of want to make it feel like it's worth it for the price, but it really makes it challenging to rate compared to everything else. So honestly, I think I'm just going to go ahead and give it an A tier. Solid level all around. If I had to sum up my experience playing this level, I think a simple, more fun to think about than to play is perfect. To me, 10 million relief plan is the worst of the DLC missions simply because it's annoying to play. That isn't really a slight on this level because I think it's still great and it's generated a lot of content for the Ace Combat community, even if it is just Torres. Starting with the good, the soundtrack for all phases are phenomenal and the overall atmosphere of this mission is unmatched. All the intro sequences for the Alicorn are perfectly executed to really match Torres' unhinged personality. The gameplay, unfortunately, is tedious. The first phase has you fighting these UAVs that specialize in an ancient Japanese form of rage bait, avoiding your missiles at the last second just to keep moving like nothing ever happened. It's hard to defend the patrol aircraft since your squad mates are couch potatoes and don't really help you with anything half the time. The second phase of the MAD is a cool gameplay element that we haven't seen since White Noise from 5, but I do find the speed restriction a bit annoying and not really necessary. The final phase is where most of my problems lie. I figured that the difficulty of the DLC missions are just higher to feel like there's more content, but the boss fight with the Alicorn just seems so overtuned. There are like 50 billion missiles, railguns, force field projections, UAVs, your mom, jamming. It's like everything that could possibly fit on the sub is being used all at the same time. That being said, the whole shock of it all makes it kind of funny for some reason. Either way, this mission went a long way for fans, and I can't help but appreciate how cool it is in the long run. I think I'm still gonna give it an A tier. Back to your regularly scheduled programming with Cape Rainy Assault. This mission is one of my favorites from 7 because of the whole cavern flying bit at the beginning. Despite how stupid it sounds in retrospect, I can't deny that it's actually really fun to play. The whole base assault thing is cool too. I think it executes the premise of the mission pretty well, and is a nice dessert. The soundtrack and dialogue are great, and complement the level well. Shout out Basilisk. Anyway, just a great level in all respects. I think it's so underrated, I'll give it an A tier. We are back in Farbani and once again we are bombing it to smithereens. Would you have it any other way? Not to give any credit to Lancaster, this mission really is just a buffet. You got everything you could possibly want in a ground attack mission, and it has some good depth and crazy number of targets so you'll never get bored in the slightest. The sunken city is as beautiful as ever, the soundtrack is great, and the dialogue fits it all together. The Soul Squadron fight, or more precisely Mihai and 4 homeless bums, is where the mission gets kinda boring. The Mihai fight is just way too scripted to be fun, and it's a problem because it's just so noticeable. It's also a lot of twiddling your thumbs. Overall, I think Farbani is pretty good, so I'm gonna go ahead and give it an A tier. I was surprised so many people hated the ID mechanic that is the next 2 missions, starting with this one, Last Hope. I always thought it was fun to mix up things, which I think is a shortfall for 6. I can understand why it could be annoying at times, especially when it takes forever to pop up, but in my opinion it's usually pretty fast and it breaks the monotony pretty well. Other than the gameplay mechanic, Last Hope is a pretty mundane mission where you escort a car. It's mostly flying around IDing things and intercepting the occasional tank blockade. The environment and soundtrack are beautiful and make the atmosphere a highlight for me. We also get some lore dump and backstory which I always think is welcome, especially in a story that's as convoluted as 7's. The Belka reveal went hard the first time I did this mission, albeit I kind of figured it from the start.
Oh, hey, look, a civilian airliner. Do it. You know you want to do it. Lock it.
All in all, it doesn't do anything crazy, but I think the IDing mechanic is a welcome change for me. I'm gonna go ahead and give Last Hope a B tier. When I first played through 7, the mission that left the biggest impression on me by far was Homeward. It felt a lot like what you'd experience with the Inferno or Stage of Apocalypse in 0. As I said before, I always thought Ace Combat was at its best when it combined the autistic fighter jet hyperfixation with a meaningful intentional message. War isn't all sunshine and rainbows, and I think these kind of levels are really needed to break up the power fantasy feel. The cherry on top is the amazing soundtrack, easily my favorite in 7 pre-DLC. As a level, Homeward excels in most categories except gameplay. In this mission, we have a continuation of the ID mechanic, but in a more standard gameplay style. While I don't necessarily hate it, and I like its implementation in the context of the mission, it doesn't really add anything fun similar to Last Hope, except a little distraction to keep things interesting. Of course, the first time you see it, it's the most interesting. The second time, well, let's just say it's good that it ends the next mission. It's nice that it doesn't overstay its welcome though. The mission update is interesting, I guess. The weather is cool, but it can be annoying to fly through when you get struck by lightning. In the end, Homeward is one of my favorite non-DLC missions in 7. And while it doesn't do anything absolutely groundbreaking, I still think it's well deserving of an A tier. The vibes are my favorite part of Lost Kingdom. The first opening where the music plays and you're met with this foggy, beautiful landscape is awesome. The castle itself is really nice, and the level is just really well designed. You get a bit of lore for this world too, and that's a nice treat. The gameplay is there too, I guess. It's pretty standard, just a couple of ground targets and some fighters. Soul Squadron is there at the end, of course after everything is already destroyed, but they're mostly pushovers. The final phase, the dogfight with Mihai and the XO2S, is pretty nice. Its EML isn't too scary in my opinion, don't think I've ever died to it, but without his plot armor, he's actually quite fun to fight. He's a bit robotic still, but maybe that's just his flying style. Again, nothing done exceptionally well even with the boss fight, so I think this level gets a B tier. The penultimate mission of 7, Lighthouse is one of the best from an objective standpoint. It's the classic throw as many fighters in a confined area and have fun design found in levels like Shattered Skies and Mayhem, and it's no less fun. It's accompanied by a great soundtrack, dialogue, and overall atmosphere. The space elevator is a crazy backdrop, and flying around it chasing down bandits is one of the coolest feelings in 7. No contest. I love the attention to detail, especially with the drone squadrons that fly this uncanny perfect formation. This level would already be great on its own, but the mission update with the Arsenal Bird puts this level on its own tier relative to other missions in 7. The fight itself is the same from the other Arsenal Bird fights, but the final force field drop is just something else. Kono was saying that he thought the level needed something else in development, and man did they find something. The sync with the song Daredevil is easily one of the coolest moments in series history, and it still never fails to get me pumped. In a game that for the most part has just been good, Lighthouse carries it to great. Just a near flawless mission in all respects. S tier easily. The last mission of 7, Dark Blue, has us fighting 2 drones with Mihai data. If that doesn't really sound fun to you, congrats, you have great cognitive abilities. The drones just move so fast, and without cheeses like EML or PLSL, it's just fire missiles and hope it kinda hits mindset. By the end of the fight, your fingers hurt from holding down for high G turns. Regardless, I do find the design of the drones to be cool. They made them interesting with TLS and even smaller attack drones. Hats off for the Belkans for being geniuses when it comes to being comically evil. The second phase of the mission is the tunnel run, which as expected is very good. It might be the best tunnel run in the game solely because of the vertical space elevator part. I don't know why Count had to be there though, that guy's a bum. Other things to note, I love the attention to detail with the dialogue if you down the UAVs before they get to Soul Squadron. Thought that was a nice touch. Of course, the intro sequence goes incredibly hard, and the ending cutscene is just bittersweet. The mission has its downfalls, but it accomplishes the task of being a good final mission. I think it gets a warm place in B tier. Well, welcome to the end. If you clicked a timestamp to get here, I know what you are. I'll forgive you though if you suck. Anyway, I'm pretty content with how it turned out. Generally, I think I got pretty disorganized with some of the rankings inside a tier, especially once there was a lot of missions to work through, but I'm pretty confident I placed most of the missions in the right tier at least. Some notable ones I want to change are likely some of the ground attack missions in 6, like San Loma or Anya Landing, which are definitely borderline B tier at their best. I also low-key think I should have put Lifeline in A tier and the Valley of Kings down a tier, but I think there are arguments for them both. Let me know what you think about the list, and I also might extend it for other entries like Ace Combat X in the future. If you didn't like it, I want to remind you that my opinion is always right and you are always wrong. Okay, bye.